She's the creator of Indigo's Theory, a blog about her experiences as a polyqueer black woman navigating the BDSM Kink community in New York City and beyond. Indigo also writes a column called Indigo's Poly Beginnings for Fearless Press, an online magazine about the intersection of life and sex. Her column focuses on the development of her polyamorous relationship with a partner, Sara Vibes, International Ms. Leather 2011, as well as her experience in the leather women's community. Alongside her partner, she has taught workshops on sexuality and BDSM practices at Dark Odyssey, Fusion, International Mr. Leather 2011, and the LGBT Center in New York City, and is a faculty member for Kink Academy, an online education resource for the BDSM community. People are going to be lining up asking her questions. Indigo's erotic writing has been featured in Salacious Magazine Issue #2, and she's a contributor to the Perverts of Color Anthology, to be published in 2012. That is exciting. Please welcome Indigo.
Oh my gosh, I'm so short. This is silly. Hi, how are you guys?
Woo!
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great, excellent. Hi, so I'm Indigo, and I am working on a queer erotic memoir, which is not really a genre apparently. There's only like gay and lesbian and erotica and memoir, and that's it, but I am just gonna fill up all those categories with my book. So, so I'm writing a book, and I got married last year, July 24th, to my beautiful, wonderful wife.
Woo!
She's so great. And we also happen to be polyamorous, so we're really pretty, and we take phone numbers. Yeah, so we're married. So there you go. So I'm going to read an excerpt from the book. The book is basically about, we got married on a Sunday, and then she went off for like a month on travel, and I went off for a month and did stuff, and we just like fucked other people, and then came back together, and our love was great. So, so I'm going to read a little excerpt from a chapter called Aussie Girl Date, which is about this really hot date that the two of us and two Aussie girls went on that I did not think was going to be as hot as it was. Okay, so we are in our favorite sex store called The Pleasure Chest, which I'm sure some of you guys know, and if you don't, you should go buy all your sexy things there. Alright, so we introduced the girls to the store clerks, who know us by name and walk through small aisles of lube, strap-ons, and dildos of all colors, materials, and sizes. Jordan, who's my partner, who I call Jordan in my stories, tried out a paddle on Ollie, her silk slip outlining her plump behind. Vicky and I were comparing several dicks when a tall, underdressed woman and two small men in business suits stumbled into the store. The woman was clearly drunk, and before I knew it, she was approaching me with a conversation. I was feeling a little tipsy myself, so I decided to bite, knowing that a night in New York City usually meant awkward drunk talk with strangers. "Oh, I want to introduce you," she said in a slurred voice. "This is Larry, and this is Jim." They shook my hand, too embarrassed to look at me in the eyes, and the woman leaned in again to speak. "We're on a date," she whispered, loud enough so the men could hear. "We're gonna have a threesome." The men's faces turned as red as the thick red dick I had just put back on the store shelf. "Well, my wife and I are on a date with these two ladies. We just got married," I said, feeling a little nervous about my stranger word vomit. "You're married? Oh my God, congratulations," she said. Then she looked confused. "Wait, you're on a date?" "Yeah, we're open, we're poly," I said. "Oh, well, you're not really married," she said, and clumsily knocked over a display vibrator. She giggled as she picked it up, apologizing to the clerk. She was suddenly distracted with her slew of sorries, and I'm reminded of that not everyone is polyamorous. Before I know it, Ollie and Jordan were at the register ringing up their purchases, a small paddle and a set of leather floggers, aside gloves and bottles of lube. Our next stop was the Cubbyhole, a lesbian bar within walking distance. We walked over, laughed, and swung our swag bags along the way. The bar was easy to spot. Out front on Friday, there are always the same group of queers and lesbians of all varieties. High femme, stone butches, leather dykes, stud, gender queers, and everyone in between. We squeeze inside, trying to avoid thrashing into bodies on our way to the bar. Jordan managed to push through the crowd to buy us drinks. While she was flagging down the bartender, Ollie and Vicky were listing off various uses for Vegemite and trying to eke out a space to dance. Ollie was bubbly and energetic. She bounced around as her form of dance and started to attract attention from ladies at the bar. Vicky and I locked eyes, and I smiled at each other shyly as I tried not to shamelessly stare at her chest. Jordan finally made it back from the bar, and after 2 rounds of choice beverages, we began clumsily laughing and dancing, finding any excuse to touch each other. The booze was filling my head with naughty thoughts of things to come. At that point in the night, we were all loosened up, grabbing each other's hips as we switched between partners and singing to familiar overplayed Rihanna songs. When the heat and the crowd became unbearable, we headed for the door and started our walk over to bar number 2. Pieces is our local gay men's bar off Christopher Street. I loved going there for drinks and gay boy compliments when I was feeling low. It was karaoke night, so I linked arms down the street and started choosing the songs we would sing. We arrived at the bar filled with gay men and their fag hags, waiting near a tiny stage for the host to call their song. After a few shots and a round of beers, Jordan and I decided on Brandy and Monica's The Boy Is Mine, and Ollie and Vicky chose In the Navy to match their sailor suits. We flirted while we waited our turn. Jordan hovered over me with my back to the bar and whispered in my ear, covering the view of her mouth with a Smirnoff Ice, a custom we call a secret beer conference. "Isn't this fun?" she said. "Yeah, it is," I said, surprised. "Go talk to Ollie. She's giving you eyes," she said, nodding her head toward the girls. I looked over to confirm, and sure enough, Ollie was giving me a look. "What do I say?" I asked. "Go negotiate, silly. Tell her what you like so we can get this party started," she said, louder than she planned. Wearing my game face, I walked over to Ollie and put my arms around her tiny waist. Our faces were close, and we couldn't help but giggle. "Hi," I said, with as much grace as possible. "Hey there," she said, biting the side of her full lips and grabbing my fat hips. "I'm very attracted to you. What do you think you'd be up to for this evening?" Then it hit me. Jordan and I were about to get laid, and a simple bar negotiation was all it would take to seal the deal. Suddenly, I was excited and a little wet. "Well, I'm submissive, a bit of a pillow queen, but I love to switch, and I like to be hip," I said, looking at the pleasure chest bag, which was still clutched in her fist. "Okay, I'm sure we can figure something out," she smiled and kissed me. Before we knew it, our song was called. Ollie and Vicky performed a fabulous rendition of In the Navy, trying to keep up with the words on the blue screen between the cheering and the yelling. Jordan and I, as Brandy and Monica, belted out The Boy Is Mine, singing with the same passion we had as middle school girls when the song was released in the 90s. The night was becoming a blur of loud music, pink feather boas, and glitter that made me crave a cigarette. I stepped outside and bummed one from a heavy-set guy with bright blonde hair. We dove into a conversation about same-sex marriage after he shared his experience volunteering at the courthouse the day of the Marriage Equality Act was passed. I told him Jordan and I were wed on that day. "You're married and poly? You're actually on a date right now," I said, hoping for a better response than my drunken encounter earlier. "Oh my God, that's amazing that you guys are poly and married. More power to you, sister," he said, running his fingers through his hair. "Girl, you better get back to your date." Bursting out of the bar door came Jordan, Vicky, and Ollie, stumbling over each other and laughing as they finished singing to the last of the bar tunes. We stood around and chatted with the guy about poly life, but we had other things in mind. "Speaking of poly," Ollie said as she grabbed my hand, "we must go home and end this date with some nice fucking." She leaned in and kissed me again. Without further hesitation, we waved goodbye and made our way to our place. It was 2 a.m. and we were good and drunk. Ollie had been taking off her tank top throughout the night, and I'd already managed to remove my tights before we reached the front steps. We stumbled and shuffled in, threw ourselves on the couch, armchair, and living room rug. Still sipping on wine coolers, we chatted at rapid speeds about movies, Australian facts, and other things queer. I could tell Jordan was ready to take all of our chatter into the bedroom, but before we could make a move, Vicky and Ollie had mentioned our nail polish. You guys have so much, we're really drunk at this point. You guys have so much nail polish, Vicky said, fumbling through the endless shades of blues, greens, and reds. Let me see your hands. They're chipping, I said, looking at the bronze-induced blurry vision of my hand. We are going to do your toes, but we're going to do our toes, and we never got to them. And at that, Vicky and Ollie were painting our toenails blue. Jordan and I were feeling quite pampered, staring down at the pretty ladies servicing our toes, even though their work was a bit sloppy. When Vicky got on the third toe, I noticed Jordan and Ollie had retreated to the bedroom where wet kissing sounds were emerging. Vicky looked up from my toes and smiled. Suppose we should join them, eh? She said. Jordan and Ollie were making out in the doorway. Ollie's new flip-flops were swinging in her hands, and Jordan was spanking her hand with her paddle. Ollie looked at me with curious eyes, and I could feel my loins tingling. Want to switch? Ollie said to Jordan. Sure, she said, handing over the paddle. I have to pee anyways. Feel free to get started without me. Ollie took my hand and led me over to the edge of the bed. Vicky propped herself up on the pillow on the headboard to watch. So, you like being hit? Ollie said. Yes, I said quietly, suddenly in submissive mode. Bend over, she said, sternly through her thick Australian accent. So I guess she'd be like, bend over. I took off my clothes and bent over the bed, my bare ass eager to receive a good beating. Ollie ran her hand over my cheeks and up and down my stout thighs. She moaned and so did I, calmed by her touch. Without warning, she hit me, which shocked and relieved me. She began a steady tempo of light taps that escalated into heavy thuds. The slapping sounds were making me wet, and watching Vicky watching me made me even wetter. My body felt soft and warm the way it always does when I submit and receive. After a series of swift hits, Holly was satisfied. Get on the bed, she said sternly. I crawled on the bed and lay on my back with my head in Vicky's lap. I looked up at her to speak, but got distracted by the huge, full breasts that were spilling over her bra. I hadn't noticed her take off her sailor dress, but I was certainly happy she did. She smiled down at me as she watched me stare. Is this okay? I said in a spacey, slow voice. Yes, this is perfect, she said. Looking at my naked body up and down, I could tell she was just as happy as I was. Jordan came back from the bathroom and gave a nod of approval when she saw me sprawled out in the bed. She showed Ollie where she could find a glove and lube in a toy bag that was spread out on the bedroom floor. Ollie snapped on a glove, a sound that has always led me further to the throes of submission. She stepped onto the bed and stood over me. She stared down at me, fully in top space, and I could only imagine the plotting that was going on behind her eyes. The longer she stared, the smaller and hotter I felt. You're a little slut, aren't you? She couldn't help but smile when she said it, but I could see she was very serious. You're ready to be fucked, aren't you? Yes, please, I said, with my best begging eyes. She squatted over me and pushed me up against Vicky to kiss me. Her lips were soft, and she kissed me like she couldn't resist. Then I could feel her hand on my cunt. She moved her fingers over my wet, swollen lips, and I could feel her mouth smile against mine. Ollie shifted towards the edge of the bed to get a good look at my pussy. I was moaning and locking eyes with Vicky as I felt Ollie's fingers dart in and out of me. Soon she pushed her fingers deep inside of me in search of my G-spot. Jordan was still watching near the door, preparing to join. Vicky was cupping my breasts and playing with my nipples while Ollie found my G-spot. This is where things get hazy, where I cannot predict the sounds that will come from me. As Ollie made the come hither motion with her fingers, I tried to control my quivering and calm my loud moaning, but Ollie was quickly learning that finger motions conjured up my favorite sounds, and I knew Jordan was egging her on. Jordan always joked she could play me like a violin whenever her fingers were inside me. A simple up curve of her digits caused a high-pitched, frequent moaning, while a down curve caused a deep moaning. She'd give away her secret to our lovers, and suddenly everyone knew how to compose my moans into a melody for their amusement. Between the nipple fondling and the fingering, I couldn't contain myself. Ollie looked into my eyes and watched my face change as I started to come. Her excitement and the poise she took inside her dominance brought me to my peak, and before I knew it, I was relaxing into a puddle that Ollie had created beneath me. She pulled her fingers out of me and looked down at my puddle. Such a good girl, she said, as she peeled off her soaked gloves. Thank you.